Hello and welcome to Deep Impact, a proud member of the Doof Network where we dive deep into our most reflective work 5 years on. Coming up next is Elliot Diebold.
And that was Ruben Morehouse.
And of course it's time to remind you that the fan art contest is ending in about 12 hours. So if you haven't got your entries in, or if you haven't even started your entry, you still have time, but you're going to have to be quick. So
get drawing.
Yep. And that's assuming that you listened to this episode right when it came out. So
if you didn't, it's probably more important that you help us stack the votes in Pact's favour.
Yeah, vote for all the Pact fan art.
So head on over to patreon.com/doofmedia and vote for just all the Pact ones.
Yeah, don't worry about those Ward ones. They'll be alright.
I mean, vote for all the good ones. They're probably all going to be great. But
yeah, of course. They're always great. I'm so excited to see them. Anyway, let's talk about Malfeasance 11.9. Blake has summoned the junior council, and they basically don't remember him and are trying to figure out who he is. Although they kind of have some clues from their relatives.
Yeah, they get there pretty quickly. I mean, I think this section really opens with them kind of squabbling about family things. You know, I think it's Lola Duchamps is sort of pressing the Behaims for information on whether Alistair is going to be the new thing. And they're like, oh, we're not falling for that. And I think that immediately sets this tone of like, okay, they're like, you know, they're squabbling for family stuff already. This isn't a good, like, this is not what we need.
Yeah.
This is not going to go well.
Yeah. I like that Craig's response to Lola's prodding is, I'm not going to give up information, when really the answer is, I don't know what's happening. Nobody knows what's happening with these dumb Behaims. Blake notes that the bell... I'll read out the line, actually. Blake thinks, the bell tolled in the background, low and ominous, as if the bell itself were present for this very scene. And I like the idea of the bell being present, because to me, what that really means is Molly being present, right? Which I really like, because, like, the idea of a junior council, like, she's the junior Thorburn, right? Like, I'm so on board with her being a part of this council. She'd totally fit in.
Yeah, well, she was a few years younger than Blake.
She's 19, so...
Okay.
On the older end of the junior council, but still counts.
No, yeah, I mean, well, you know, Padraig's in there. I don't know how much.
Yeah, true. He's, what, $1 billion?
But, yeah, and I mean, also, obviously... Again, while we're on the topic of things that make you feel like this isn't going to work right from the start of the chapter, bringing up the bell that's literally emanating like angry conflict feelings doesn't seem like it's setting a great tone of, this is going to work.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the bell is like literally the embodiment of ominousness that is settling over the town, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So I think it's interesting to talk about. We touched on this at the end of the last chapter, how Blake kind of had this very specific moment of choosing not to go down his boogeyman path and kind of reaffirming his humanity here. And he kind of lives up to that over the course of this chapter. He is so clearly trying to be a vulnerable, like, open human being. And I really love his whole vibe this chapter.
Yeah, I mean, it especially comes through in how, like, unabashedly honest he is.
Yeah.
Like, he says so many things where he's like, they're going to hate this, but, like, it's the truth, and he needs to say it. Like, he's not sucking up to them. He's, like, just laying it all out there.
Yeah, definitely. I don't know. This chapter kind of gives me the vibe of Blake, not quite giving it a last-ditch effort, I guess, but definitely kind of making a conscious choice to avoid being a boogeyman and trying to take the human route, which here is kind of represented as trying to get these people to stop fighting and work together for everyone's greater good. But I mean, we'll get to this. The conversation doesn't go well in that sense, which kind of then he ends being his most boogeymanish ever.
Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously, like, a big thing that comes up multiple times in this chapter is the whole idea of having him bound by the Seal of Solomon.
Yeah.
Which is obviously important because it's very much a symbol of the current institution.
Yeah.
But I mean, you know, Lola also mentions that apparently it would provide him with, like, a power source and protections and stuff, which, you know, obviously feeds into the whole concept of the system. You know, you become part of it and you're sort of rewarded for that.
It feels very much like he's choosing to opt into, I don't know, I mean, maybe I'm overreaching by calling it a capitalist system, but this kind of system where he's choosing to opt in to become a cog in the machine, basically.
Well, no, he's choosing not to do that
Sorry,
by not taking
doing
the
the
seal.
seal
on.
would
Yeah.
be choosing to do that. Yeah.
Yes.
And of course, it
but
gives
so it's
you,
like,
yeah.
oh, yeah, and so it's like it's not just that he's taking a stand, trying to do things in a non-violent, like more human or whatever way.
Yeah.
He's also taking that stand against becoming part of the system. Like he's saying no, like this is my new goal. Fuck the wheel. I'm going to break it. Like he's basically a practitioner anarchist now. Which you can understand why everyone would be upset at, like, someone with moderate diabolism knowledge starting to think this way. But yeah, I think the interesting thing for me is not just that he's taking this stand in trying to do it the human way, but he's also really taken this ideological stand and he's sticking by it, which is, also a very human thing to do.
Yeah. It reminds me of a comment that I saw in the comments of this chapter, where somebody mentioned that Rose was, sorry, when I say Rose, I mean Granny Rose was very keen on breaking the wheel and also created Blake. And maybe there's some intentionality to Blake's desperate aversion to not be a cog in the machine.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I don't think we're going to find out that, like, Rose knew he would be in the drains and come back. Like, that seems a little bit too much. Like, the whole story was just dictated by Rose Sr. and Eamon. But I think it is interesting seeing how some of these ideas he was programmed with are maybe evolving as he's lived beyond his intended use. Like she planted lots of seeds of ideas in him from the looks of it, and some of those are starting to sprout. And maybe they didn't quite expect it to ever get this far.
Yeah.
Also, Penelope's familiar was mean to Evan, so I'm putting that familiar on the same tier list as for how much they need to be gotten rid of.
But, well, I kind of side with the familiar, right? Because the familiar says, don't treat us like we're equals. And it's true. Evan's way better. So she was right.
If an 8-year-old comes up to you and is like, hey, let's hang out, you don't just be like, fuck off, you're an 8-year-old. I'm an adult. You don't know me.
I mean, you do that when you're like 16.
Yeah, but I think this familiar is a lot older than 16. Well, point is, bird familiar of Penelope is bad.
Yeah.
Evan good, and so I'm not on this other bird's side.
All right, fair enough. So Mags arrives, and with Mags here to mediate, they can actually properly begin their discussion. And Blake starts by outlining that their common enemy is the wheel. So let's break it.
There's a bit where I think it's Lola calls him out on how cryptic he keeps being now. And I mean, we've had a lot of that from Rose and stuff as well. Like that does seem like it's becoming a bit of a pattern for Blake. He just he leads with all these things that aren't quite his point, and people just think he's being cryptic.
No, he likes the drama. He likes the long lead up. That's what it is. He knows how to please the spirits.
Yeah, pretty much.
So look, this is a hard sell by Blake, right? Like, the Behaims and the Duchamps, I mean, it's almost as if they were written to be families that exploit dynasties. No, I know, right? And even so, these kids who are on the receiving end of all the bad things of this dynasty, basically being, Blake calls the Behaims cows that feed their milk into the giant wheel of cheese, I guess, while the Duchamps are, married off explicitly for the good of the family. And so these kids have the most reason to jump on board with this plan. And even so, they won't, because it is asking them to, turn their backs on their families and kind of betray, to an extent, or at least they definitely see it as a betrayal, betray their family.
Yeah, and I mean, this isn't even really a metaphor. This is exactly kind of what it is in real life. Like, it's so hard to get people on board with big radical changes like this, because you have to give up so much of the safety and security the system does still give you. And also you usually have to turn your back on everyone around you. So it's like you have the risk of dragging other stones into the pond, so to speak. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's frustrating to read just because it's so real, this idea that, like, they all do kind of agree, but it's asking so much to ask someone to take that plunge. Like, you can't hold it against them as much as you want to.
Yeah, they're so young as well. Like, you're asking what, a 14-year-old, a 13-year-old, a 12-year-old to emancipate themselves from the family? Like, it's just not. I don't know. I mean, I get it. There's just no correct answer to it, really.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you know, you have to be someone like kind of radical and self-sacrificing like Blake to be the person to take this stand.
Yeah.
And I mean, I guess we'll see how it goes.
Yeah. So the Behaims, unsurprisingly, don't side with Blake, so he turns his attention towards Lola Duchamps.
Yeah, and I mean, hitting up the Duchamps more transparently makes sense to me because their deal is much more transparently shit. Like, the Behaims, he sort of has to be like, oh, didn't you know that, like, secretly you don't get a very good deal? Whereas, like, the Duchamps, there's no secrets about it. They all get a pretty shit deal.
Yeah.
It's a much easier case to make.
Yeah, and Blake makes it with some brutal honesty. I've pulled out a huge, long chunk of text here, and I'm not going to read it all out, but basically Blake... I mean, yeah, Lola's response to Blake is like, well, look, if we win this contest here for lordship, maybe I won't have to get married. Maybe our power will be secured anyway, and it will be fine. And Blake's response is like... I mean, the key part to me here is, I wonder, I said, if your mum thought the same thing, or if Sandra convinced herself she could change it all, which is so good because we know that it's true. And, you know, like, obviously Lola is close enough to Sandra as her daughter that she probably knows some of this too. It's so on point.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. Like, and we've talked about this a lot, and Pact has been talking about this idea that a lot of people start off and they're like, yeah, I'm going to break the wheel or whatever. I've just got to, like, stay in the system to achieve this, and then I'll be in a position to break it, and that just doesn't work.
It seems like every single character has had that exact same train of thought, like Laird, you know, Eamon, Granny Rose, Sandra, Johannes. They're all like, yeah, we're going to change the system, but first, we just need to use the system a little bit first.
Yeah, I mean, arguably Rose Senior is the one with the most success right now, and it looks like that was largely an accident anyway. So, I mean, I guess I'm interested to learn a lot more about what her actual plan was. Like how much she did plan. Like, it's hard to know how much of this was like orchestrated, how much of this was just her, you know, scattering pieces on a chessboard in a way she hoped would turn out well.
Maybe this is going to be a bit of a weird fan theory, but. She obviously cut away, like, you know the old analogy about goblins being the parts that were cast off when fairies were made, right? That's basically, as we understand it, Blake being created by taking all the shitty bits of Rose and dumping them into their own person, right?
Yeah.
And so maybe Granny Rose tried to create a perfect practitioner, and a perfect practitioner in this world is one who plays within the rules and maximizes the system to their benefit. And just the opposite of that, the part that was cast away, is the fuck the system bits, and that's where Blake has come from.
Yeah, or you know, it could be a very interesting thing. Her way of trying to break the system was exactly wrong, and everything she's put in Rose that she hoped would shatter the system has actually not really worked out, and it's all in Blake. Like, that'd be kind of funny and humbling for her.
Well, I mean, she's not around to see it, unfortunately.
I'll pop her out from the afterlife for a bit to rub it in her face. Yeah. I mean, yeah, so you're right. Like, Blake really sort of, he's just made this big pitch. And I feel like this is a turning point in the story here. Like, even more so than Blake coming out of the drains. Like, that felt like the start of a new dawn. And this is the book sort of saying, here's what we're going to be explicitly dealing with for the next while. And I think, like, we've known that this was coming. Like, the story has laid these seeds, but this is very much now it's stopping and saying, you know, Blake is on board with this. This is where it's going. This is what the conflict's going to be. You know, buckle up.
Yeah, definitely. Unfortunately for Blake, he doesn't get much traction with the Duchamps either. And so he finally turns to Briar Girl to try and get at least one person on side.
Yeah, which is like, what's he hoping to achieve with Briar Girl? Because she's already just about as out of the system as she reasonably can be, right? Like, I mean, she doesn't really seem like part of the system to a huge degree.
Yes. I kind of get the sense that he's just trying to stop it being a catastrophic failure. Because if he can convince one person, maybe there's, like, some way to keep that momentum.
Yeah, that's fair.
Or halt his negative momentum. But he really doesn't... he really hurts his case. Like he keeps making references to everyone being worse off if this doesn't happen, and putting yourself in the mind of the other people in this scene, having basically a demonic spirit say everyone's gonna suffer if this doesn't happen. Like it's not the kind of thing that makes you think, yeah, let's have a truce. Let's have a truce. No.
Yeah, I mean, well, to take it to like a real worldish analogy, it's kind of like a member of a famous weapons dealer family coming up and being like, hey, let's all sign this peace treaty or everyone is, going to be in trouble. And it's sort of like, okay, so what? Like, you're going to blow us all up if we don't sign it? It's hard not to read a sort of implicit threat into it.
And it's like Blake saying, well, I'm not going to blow you up, but my cousin over there who has all the guns is going to blow you up. Like, I don't want it to happen. It's so terrible.
You can see from their context why this doesn't work as well as it sounds to us and to Blake.
Yeah, it sounds like Blake's just being the good cop to Rose's bad cop. So interestingly, Blake thinks to himself, damn me, damn them, damn it all, as it kind of falls apart.
Mm-hmm.
And this is obviously very intentional word choice, considering that these are the words that the book starts with.
Yeah.
Why do we think it's here, is my question. And I have an answer to this, and it's a pretty grim answer, but I'm curious to hear what you think.
I mean, I'm sure there's probably even a bunch of reasons. Like for me, this is part of why, I was just talking about how I feel like this chapter is the start of, I don't know, like the real conflict of the book, right? Like this is where everything's going to start moving towards the end goal, pretty directly. And like, so tying it back to the opening of the book, like would fit there.
Yeah.
That's probably more metatextual than what you're talking about.
No, mine is honestly quite similar. I mean, I think at the base level, the situation that made Blake say that the first time was he was dealing with his family, which kind of means that he sees this as about as frustrating as dealing with his family, which is a burn against this council.
Is he warming up to his family?
Yeah, true.
As we see towards the end of the chapter, he's not as against working with them as you would have thought.
Mm-hmm. But what it makes me think is, like, and we kind of touched on the idea that this is Blake making a very strong attempt to be a human and getting kind of knocked back for it, and going towards being a boogeyman. At least that's kind of my read on some of the stuff this chapter. And so having this echo the start of the story, which is when he started existing, basically, right? Like Blake started existing as an other when these words first came out, and now he's kind of doubling down on that as they come out for the second time. I don't know, it makes me think it kind of like what you said, a turning point for Blake, but in a quite a bad direction.
I mean, yeah, potentially.
Knowing the literary world that this story is set in, I know that these words are going to show up one more time, and I'm so excited to see what that is.
I hadn't thought of that. You're right. The rule of threes. I can't wait to see where it shows up. I imagine it's going to be Blake doing something as he does it this time, like him actively pushing a button, so to speak.
Yeah. We'll see. Basically, everyone says no to him.
Yep.
And Blake basically tries a few last-ditch efforts to try and get some people on side.
Yeah, there's a real sense of desperation in this. I think it's our first sign of the big plays he's going to decide to make in a little bit.
The big, terrible plays. Again, he notes that he's actively hurting his ability to get these people on side. I wonder, I know he's delivering these truth bombs, but I honestly do wonder if he was a bit more willing to play the game, as it were, would he be able to actually form some stronger connections? Like, has he hurt himself by being too honest here?
Yeah, or is that the trap that
true.
everyone else has fallen into?
Yeah, true. Maybe if he just plays by the rules for a little bit, he'll be able to break the system.
Yeah, and I mean, that's the thing. It's this like fascinating duality in this thing where he's trying to get everyone to come on board, but he has to do it so aggressively he's kind of pushing them away. It's kind of sad, right? It's frustrating to read because
I mean, we as the audience are so on board with breaking the wheel, and it's just getting no traction.
Yeah.
So Blake is basically worn down by their complete unwillingness to negotiate with him, and he kind of flips out and kind of promises to fuck them up. I mean, he doesn't say it. He doesn't say that, but he says it in a way that kind of sounds like he's saying that.
Yeah, well, they sort of challenge him. They're like, oh, what are you going to do? And he's like, I can't tell you, or you'd want to stop me, which is pretty much him saying, this will be bad for you.
Yes. Yeah.
So, and again, we already talked about how he's, a monster associated with a demon family. So it's very reasonable for them to not at all believe his, like, half-assed attempts to be like, no, it's cool. I'm going to do something real bad, but it's like for you guys.
Yeah. The wording that he uses is, oh, you won't believe me if I just talk about it? Well, fine, I'd better act then. And it's very much like that's the words that a serial killer would say before he kills his first victim, Yeah,
it's not a direct threat, but there does feel like there's a sort of implicit, indirect one mixed into it, yeah.
I think it's the kind of phrase that would seem ambiguous enough that you could be like, that's probably not a threat, except it's being said to you by like a half-tree ghost man mirror ghost.
Yeah, exactly.
And you're like, oh, okay, I can't, like, I would give you the benefit of the doubt, but you're a spooky mirror tree ghost, and so that kind of doesn't apply. Yeah. So Blake heads back to the house, and with Evan's help, they break in, or fly in on a mirror. He finds the restrained Thorburns that are waking up now, and reveals himself to them. He very explicitly just makes them aware of him.
I want to think this is a happy good thing, but I don't know if it is. I mean, we just sort of, we were just talking before about how, you can understand why the Behaims and Duchamps aren't going to get on board with this sort of thing, because it requires you to go so all in and take these huge risks. And this is Blake doing that. I mean, that's his whole plan here is...
that's always his plan.
Well, yeah, his plan, such as it were, to kind of put it all out on the line. And it's just like, I want to believe that we will be able to look back at this in, 3 arcs or an arc or whatever and say, yeah, he really proved his point, but...
Yeah, no.
I mean, I feel like it's very low odds. For starters, it's the Thorburns, and they're all a bunch of shitheads.
Yeah.
Second of all, I mean, I can't wait to see Rosa's reaction when she gets back. She's going to be thrilled.
This is like a million times worse than him taking Evan as a familiar without telling her. Yeah.
And then, everyone else in town's going to be like, oh, you made more Thorburns. I guess you really are for peace. It's just, it seems like a very...
It's such a bonkers plan.
It's so optimistic to think that there's going to be anyone out there who will look at this and think, oh yeah, Blake's going in the right direction.
Yeah. He says to the council, like, keep in mind what I'm about to do. Remember, I'm doing it for everybody. And I don't know how anybody could interpret this as being for the greater good of everybody in town.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, go to Mags's dad's or something if you want to. Although, don't do that. Don't drag them into this.
They've been through enough, Elliot.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. This is just... This is so fun. Like, I think, as a spirit, I'm totally on board with this. It's going to be fun either way. I don't have high hopes for us being able to look back at this and think, this directly helped Blake move in the right direction.
Yes. Yeah. We'll see, I guess.
And I mean, yeah. So obviously, as I sort of already touched on, this is a chapter that for me was all about, staking the claim of what the final conflict of the book is going to be centered around for Blake. And it ties into, I mean, because we had the beat in the last chapter in 11.8 where Blake was frustrated that he didn't have the connection and the responsibility for his friends anymore.
Yeah.
You can't help but wonder if there's a little tiny bit of him that's like remembering
more.
That when he does this, and it's like, this is not the way to deal with those feelings, Blake.
Yeah, this must be the shittiest replacement cabal that could possibly exist. I mean,
this does not help. This does not help that hole that was left in you, I don't think. I mean, prove me wrong, Ellie, Callan, Roxanne, oh god,
Catherine.
Peter, I guess.
Well, but no, Peter's not here, right? Like,
Actually, Peter. Well, we still don't know. I think last chapter, Eva or Andy said they were going to go out. I think they said Eva was going to go out, and get him.
Yeah, of all the Thorburns, like, Peter sounds like one who might actually be useful, but he's not here. You didn't even get the slightly useful Thorburn.
I mean, Ellie would be second place.
Yeah, except she's...
Or out of the pack that's there.
She's so much a wild card. Like, she's so much unable to...
Well, yeah, but who's Blake to judge?
Yeah, that's true. I don't know. Like, Blake to the rest of the Cabal is what Ellie is to the Thorburns. Like, you don't need she's a double Blake. You don't need a double Blake. Anyway.
I'm so excited to see where this goes.
We'll see next time. But before then, we wanted to take a look at some comments from when this chapter first came out 5 years ago and see what people were saying about it.
What have you got?
So there were a fair few comments in here that were talking about comparing the Behaim leaders, which is something that people have been doing for a while. But I kind of thought this would be a nice opportunity now that obviously Laird is gone. Duncan is more or less out of the picture, seemingly, at least
He's
of
on the
power. Yeah. And we have the new Behaim coming in. It's a good chance to reflect back on fond memories of Behaim's past. And so there are a few comments that I want to talk about here. There was a user called Glassware who was talking about that liking Alistair, even though he's a bit of a jerk, but finding Duncan non-offensive, which I can't relate to, and disliking Laird the most because he's too abusive of his power. And then under this, Yaglorba commented, countering, talking about how Laird kind of had something that he really believed in, and that was what made him endearing to Yaglorba. And this was an interesting point for me to be raised.
I just want to say that's interesting to me because I don't feel like I have a firm grasp on what Laird was trying to do. No. I agree that he was seemingly trying to do something, but I do not know what it was right now.
Yes. Yeah. And I remember us talking about this, the difference between Duncan and Laird being Laird kind of feeling like he was pointing the ship in a direction, whereas Duncan was just kind of following at the back, rowing the oars or whatever in the ship metaphor it is. And it's interesting to me to think about the fact that a lot of Laird's problems came from how driven he was to his goals, right? To promoting the Behaim family, to trying to do whatever he was trying to do. That was the reason that he kind of was willing to be a corrupt authority figure, as Glassware put it. To contrast that, Duncan is a follower, and therefore he's just more likely to, be relatively passive.
Yeah, that's true. That is interesting. And I guess, I'm getting the impression Alistair is a lot more on the Laird side of that scale.
Yeah, maybe the recklessness of a Laird without the experience.
Yeah. So I've pulled out a comment by Mond Semmel, and this is part of a series of comments sort of talking about, talking about the Seal of Solomon, because obviously that came up a fair bit this chapter, and they were sort of talking, about the origins of it, and there was some interesting speculation there. But like one of the things that they obviously highlighted, that I hadn't been thinking about recently was this idea that part of, we've seen the Seal of Solomon has like an inherent power, like even if you're not bound to it, some of its rules can still apply to you. It's so widespread and is such a foundational part of the system that even if you're not signed up to it, it can still impact you indirectly, which of course is a great metaphor and all that, but also made me realize Blake has no plan for what he wants to fix or change with the system, right? Like he knows it's shit and he knows he needs to change it. But he's basically trying to drag the entire world down one of his Blake plans, which is this thing bad, let's get rid of it. Yeah. But he hasn't thought far enough ahead about what he wants to fix it with, which I'm very interested to see where we go with that side of the equation moving forward, because until he's actually pitching a new idea or a replacement like Black Lamb's Blood did.
Yeah.
I don't understand how he thinks he's going to get people on board, because at the moment he just seems like a destructive force.
I wonder if the Black Lamb's Blood plan is the plan that he thinks in his head will work. I But
He should tell people that.
Yeah, but having said that, that does feel less like breaking the system, more like putting another system, like replacing the system, you know?
Well, that wasn't even replacing the system. The Black Lamb's Blood idea was to like, it was like a patch. It was the system 1.1.
A hot fix, yeah.
They just wanted, they just wanted one small change to let Diabolists be less of a harm to the system and actually have them integrated properly.
Demons OP, nerf, please. Yeah. I think, I mean, you've written here, Blake has no plan for what the new system will be. And you know, any sentence that starts with Blake has no plan is obviously correct. He just, I mean, I hate to say this, Blake, but you just haven't thought this one through, unlike your other great plans.
I mean, I agree with him. I just think, you'd have a lot, like, it didn't occur to me until I was reading this comment that it was like, Blake, you're going to have a much easier time convincing people if you're providing an alternative.
Yeah.
And that was what Black Lamb's Blood did for him. Was it presented an alternative and he was like, okay, I can see this.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
totally.
Very interested to see where we go with this moving forward.
Yeah, and we'll have to wait and see. Maybe next episode. Leave us your thoughts on how terrible you think making the Thorburns aware is. Actually, we were going to do a discussion question, but we decided not to for this chapter of what you think the implements of these Thorburns would be if they become practitioners. And I think that is a great question that I would love to hear answers to in our discussion thread, which will be linked down in the show notes below.
Yes, and of course, if you want to reach out to us on not Reddit, we're on the Twitter.
Yep.
At MediaMD Podcast.
Yep. A great place to tweet at us. Elliot does some live reads.
It's the only place to tweet at us, actually. It's a different verb in other places.
Yeah, you would do something else. Like Google us. And from doing that, you would find yourself on the doofmedia.com website, which is where you can find all the great shows on the Doof Media Network, of which we are one. We're a show on the Doof Media Network, at the very least. Other shows on the Doof Media Network include my eternal favourite, which is What You Say, and Do the Right Thing, the youngest Doof show, I guess, or is What You Say the youngest?
Technically, What You Say as a rebranding of our view is younger, but yes, obviously, and Do the Right Thing as well has just switched to a new release day, so it should be coming out the same day as this episode, I believe.
It's out right now, maybe.
Probably. So go give it a listen, join in. It's a lot of fun to do the right thing.
Yeah, definitely.
Yes, and of course, if you want to support Do the Right Thing, Deep Impact, the rest of the Doof Network, head on over to patreon.com/doofmedia, and remember, we're stacking the fan art contest. So help us do that.
Yeah. And if you would like to support Wildbow, who is the author of all of the great shows that have that we also muchly enjoy.
Shows or stories? Has Wildbow branched out?
Oh shit! I wasn't supposed to say that. It's a spoiler. No, just stories for now. Anyway, to support Wildbow, you can go to patreon.com/Wildbow.
Yeah. So apart from that, we'll see everyone on Wednesday the 2nd for a bonus chapter, Malfeasance 11.10.
All right, we'll see you then.